Okay, so let's start our discussion and construction of the Raspberry Pi 10.1-inch touchscreen monitor with a look at the contents that you get in your kit. So first of all, you'll find a user's manual, so keep this handy. Second, of course, is the monitor that is going to be used in the construction of your kit. You'll notice on the back that this is where the Raspberry Pi is going to be inserted. There are a number of screws here that we're going to take out, and then the Raspberry Pi will go inside here. Okay, so be careful of this. Other contents include these three cables. Okay, so the first cable that I have here on the left is a USB-A to USB-C cable. Next, in the middle, I have a USB-C to USB-C cable. And on the right-hand side, I have an HDMI to HDMI cable. This is for video connections. All right, so let's continue our exploration. We also have these four boards that, these are little electrical boards that are used to connect the Raspberry Pi to the electrical board in the monitor. Okay, so we have on the top left here the HDMI-D board. We have a micro USB board continuing clockwise, a Type-C board, and an HDMI-A board. Each one of these, if we look at this, is going to include a little adapter, right? This is the port or connector that's going to connect with the Raspberry Pi. And then on the back, we have a pin connector here. It's a little bit hard to see. If I zoom in, if I zoom in on this, I think you'll be able to see it a little bit better. Right, so there's our pin connector right there, right? And this is going to be inserted into the monitor board, all right? Now, we're not going to be using all of these. We're only going to be using the HDMI-D board and the Type-C board. Okay, so these two, the HDMI-A and the micro USB, are not going to be used in our construction. These are for different Pi boards, Pi 1, Pi 2, and Pi 3 kits, or kits installing the Pi 1, 2, or 3. Since we're going to be using the Raspberry Pi 4, we're going to need the HDMI-D and the Type-C board. Okay, so let's put those aside, and we'll continue our look at the contents here. So we also have two end panels in our kit. Okay, these are end panels that are going to be inserted in the back of your monitor to gain access to the different ports in the Raspberry Pis. Okay, now we're only going to use one of these again. So if you look down at the bottom, and here I'll zoom in again. If you look right here, you can see the type of board that this is designed for. So this is the end panel for the Raspberry Pi 3, and we're not going to be using this. This is the end panel for the Raspberry Pi 4, and this is the one that we're going to use. Okay? So those are the end panels. Of course, we have the power adapter. Here's the wall connection right here, and then we have the connection right here for the monitor. This is used to plug in the monitor to give power. All right, so these two connectors, they're really the same, only they have a different termination point. These connectors are used to connect the Raspberry Pi with the monitor. Okay, so they both have a 3-pin connector right here. You can see 3 pins. They both have a twisted white, green, and black wires. One terminates in a USB-A connection, and the other terminates in 3 bare wires, and these are used for soldering the connection. All right. Now, we're not going to do any soldering, so we're not going to use this one right here. We're going to use the USB-A to 3-pin connection. Okay. And last but not least, we have 4 very important parts here. We have the 4 screws that are used to mount the Raspberry Pi to the monitor board. Okay, now these are flathead Phillips screws, machine screws. They're rather short. If I zoom in on this, let me zoom in a little bit here. Right, you can see they're very short. These obviously are very easy to lose, and we don't want to lose those. So be very careful with these. Keep these in a safe spot because we definitely will be using these. They're going to be used to connect the Raspberry Pi to the monitor board. You're also given a Phillips head screwdriver, which you're going to use to take screws out and put these screws in. You can also use other Phillips head screwdrivers. Just make sure the tip is roughly the same size, right? So the nice thing about these screwdrivers, as you can kind of tell, is that they're magnetized, right? So this one is magnetized, and that's going to be important because these are tiny screws and they're hard to get into the right location. So a magnetic tip on the screwdriver is really going to be helpful. All right, so those are the contents of the kit. The next thing we'll look at is the contents of the Raspberry Pi kit.